freedom. Right now, the issue of undocumented immigrants and migrants crossing the border is a big deal. People are playing on people's nativism, fear of the other. It's working, might work very well. I don't know. People play on this all the time, but that's finding something to play on their fears. And yes, that's an example of propaganda, because almost always they want you to think a certain point of view and they mislead, they take things out. And most politicians will do that. So lots of the grievances, and they just laid it out. Here are just a few of them. They laid out everything the king did. Look what that king did. He's done it all. They blamed him for every single thing. These are just a few. Everything from creating rights of people, making the judges cronies of the state. If your judicial system is corrupt, the whole thing could break apart. Imposing taxes without consent, no jury without trial. Here he incited domestic insurrection among us and endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, I know, whose known rule of warfare is undistinguished from destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. He has blamed them for attacks along the frontier, implying that American Indians are fighting along the frontier because the King of England told them to, not because they're trying to defend their land, which of course is patently ridiculous. He also blamed them for what are domestic insurrections. But specifically, what's happening? What's he blaming them on? What did Lord Dunmore do in Virginia? Remember, Danny? Dunmore was the royal governor of Virginia. What did he do? It would be the last straw to push the colonies to declare independence. Yeah, freed slaves, and they did what? And that's domestic insurrection. Domestic insurrection of slave rebellions. And so the slaves would never rebel if not for one simple fact. The king made them. That's patently ridiculous. Yes.
Hold on. Yeah, that is ridiculous. I mean, in certainly if you take someone unsliced and freed on the way and treat them with cruelty unimagined, there's certainly no way that they could be in any way frustrated with you. How could that possibly be?
Good point. In fact, they like slavery. We'll come back to this. And so they created the United States. And we're not sure what the United States is yet. Are they 13 individual states or is it a country? We don't know yet. They might fight a little war about this. You might have heard of it, called the Civil War. So we're coming back to that. But while that's going on, and they read the Declaration of Independence, they sent that handbill. I think I pointed that out the other day. Did I point that out? The Beatles. Yeah, the Beatles went British invasion. They sent this handbill out. That's the first thing that people saw, and basically was like, "We're independent." What? And that went out to everybody. And you notice it says on top, it says July 4th. So most people, when they heard about the Independence Declaration, they saw it on this piece of paper here. That very one. It's printed everywhere. But that's a copy of it. So that's what they thought the Independence State was July 4th. It's that handbook. And so it just kind of became it. Even though Independence Day was actually 2 days early. Now, does it really matter? Yes. No, it doesn't really matter. And now we're stuck in July 4th and whatever. But that's kind of just a little bit of ironic twist. While that's going on, up here in Halifax, over 500 ships are getting ready to attack the brand new United States. The British aren't done. General Howe is leading a massive invasion force, over 30,000 troops, and a massive Royal Navy squadron under his brother, Admiral Howe. We got the Howe family, and they're going to attack. And they made the decision to attack. Okay, Boston's too crazy. We'll cut it off. They're going to attack New York. By the way, the kind of creepy, I don't know if he's trying to be young or old here. Either way, it doesn't work very well. And where are they going to attack? New York. Washington knew how, that's supposed to be a period. I put a comma, hey, this is 1776. There's no grammatical rules. I can do whatever I want. I could have spelled that with an asterisk. No one cares. They actually landed on Staten Island, which is right here. And then there was not really a town there yet. Now it's part of New York City. And then they're going to cross over and take Long Island. So Long Island's this Long Island, get it? That's called Long Island. Very clever, huh? And then just across the strait they call the East River is Manhattan. New York City's actually, at that time, just right here. Now this is all people. 10 million, not that. But Washington knows it. He comes down, he has maybe 1,000 soldiers that we would consider regular or professional soldiers. They're kind of a little bit of training, but they're not very well equipped. They're always short of gunpowder, so they can't really practice. And then he has maybe 9,000 more militia. Washington's in New York City. He knows they're in Staten Island. He can see this massive fleet of ships here. There's just ships everywhere, all the transport ships, everything. And Washington decides, I have to put up a fight. And so he crosses over to Long Island, knowing that's where they're going to attack first. What a terrible mistake. Crossing over to an island, what if he's isolated there? This is the only army the Continental Army really has, except for militia. They lose this, they could lose everything. But Washington decides to bring his army outnumbered 3-1 and cross into Long Island. Now today, this is all Brooklyn. There's a city. And if you go to Brooklyn, it kind of gradually goes up to a hill. Then it's very rugged, I guess very beautiful. Now it's all, Brooklyn's kind of cool, but it's all people up to these heights. And he organizes his men here. And this will be called the Battle of Brooklyn Heights. Now, the problem with it, sometimes you see it called the Battle of Long Island. And that's kind of like the whole, there's a couple other battles here. Washington puts his main forces here. And he does something he's going to do time after time because he never fought with large armies. He had fought along the frontier. He understood the guerrilla fighting. He had been fighting against the French and fighting against tribes trying to defend their land. Bray brought up on the British made him do it, but he had his men here. He didn't protect his flank. It's called hanging flanks. So here he had his men facing this way, but not defending here. Howe had so many more men. He sent 10,000 men under one of his best generals, Clinton, around the flank and hit him at the side. So you can imagine what happened. Howe could attack here, here, and here, hold these men in place, and while they're fighting, all of a sudden 10,000 men come here. And what did Washington's militia do when all of a sudden there's 10,000 men coming from the other side? Take off. And it was just a mad scramble. They all ran away. The British chased them. It's over. The only thing that saved Washington's army and the United States was darkness. It got too dark and the British just had to stop. The only thing, if it would have been an hour earlier, Washington's army would have had to surrender. They couldn't survive. It would have been over. And there'd be no United States. They were able to get to this little spot here, and they had entrenchments they had dug, and now Howe leisurely marched his men up, and it just gonna take them. It's over. You can imagine Howe's thinking, these dumb colonials. Sure, they can act tough, but not when they actually have to fight. And it's all over. In fact, Washington's back is to the East River, and the Royal Navy is powerful. He's trapped. A terrible mistake. He has got to get to New York. But, we're jumping right to here. The East River, that little strait, was really rough. And so Admiral Howe didn't want to put ships there at night because they might get hung up on the rocks. And so there were no ships. If you would have put a couple frigates there, ships like this, just 2 of them, even one, and Washington would have trapped. So Howe was complacent. moved his men up slowly. Washington realizing he probably had one night. No British ships there. It was too dark. They would get hung up in the rocks. And this is a painting of it, a watercolor. But they went to the shore. Washington's men, they kind of retreated, acted like they were there, then pulled back. They brought whale boats, which are big rowboats. Had actually men who were whalers from Rhode Island who were in the militia, row them across. And here's a stamp commemorating this from 1951. The 3-cent stamp. And they pulled across. This is sometimes called the Miracle of Kip's Bay. Washington pulled his army across the bay. So Howe attacked empty fortifications the next day. If Washington couldn't have retreated, the war would have ended right there. And the Declaration of Independence would have been nothing but a footnote in British history. There would be no United States. It would have not. It was that close. One ship and it would have been over. So Washington would escape. And it's one of the great what ifs in history. What if General or Admiral Howe put 2 frigates, risked the rocks? Washington could not have escaped. It's not even, there's so many possibilities, you can't even do it. It's one of the great what ifs. The miracle at Kip's Bay, it's called. The miracle of Kip's Bay. And so Washington fled here. Howe would attack a little bit further north, and Washington did the only thing he could do, run away. He abandoned New York City. And when they abandoned New York City, he was going to burn some of his stores, some of his equipment he couldn't take with, and he accidentally caught the whole town on fire. So New York City burnt down by Washington on accident, his orders. Oh, awful fire. It's called the Great Fire of New York. But now it deprived Howe of some of the stuff in New York City. Washington fled north. There'd be a fight up here between Washington's forces and part of Howe's army at Harlem Heights. Now that's the part of Manhattan called Harlem. And if you ever get to Harlem, there's a really good restaurant called the Red Rooster. Don't forget that, the Red Rooster. Really good. Have you been there? You been there? Go. I had chicken and waffles. It was kind of so good, it kind of blew me away.
Fried chicken and waffles?
Yeah. But it was, it was just, may not about that other place, but it was like, wow. In fact, the guy who owns it is on the Food Network. Robert Samuels. Want more stories? Moving on. But this time, once again, Washington left his flanks open. He did it time after time. But the army fought better. They didn't run right away. And they retreated, so the British won, but it wasn't a destruction. And Washington fled up into here. There'll be another battle called White Plains, and same deal. Washington's army was defeated, but they did fight better. The problem was his army was down to about 4,000 men. Only a few of the trained regulars and a few others were there. This was a disastrous defeat. 2 months after the Declaration of Independence, and Washington's army was routed and New York City fell. They're panicking in Philadelphia, absolutely panicking. In fact, John Adams, who wanted Washington to be the commander, is demanding the Congress fire him, replace him with a general by the name of George. Yeah, the name was gone for a second there. To replace him, and if that would have happened, it would have been over.
They wanted to replace the guy named George Washington with a
Yes, a former British officer. Yeah, and it would have been a disaster. This is the lowest point. Washington had a fleet in New Jersey. He lost half of his cannon and gunpowder by leaving it in a fort in Manhattan Island. Here are this is a watercolor of American forces retreating, and it shows them in blue militia uniforms. But most of them didn't have uniforms. They had whatever rags they happened to be wearing. And they fled into New Jersey. They fled up here, then fled down here and ran away. But Howe thought the war was over. Winter's coming, it's wet, it's hard to campaign, and wait till spring. When the spring rains end, wipe the Americans out. So here's a picture of Washington, painting of him fleeing. It's over. A disaster. But it's not. Washington is sort of learning something. Very, very important. To get this, we have to talk about the differences between the combatants. Combatants are the two sides. Quick little column. The British and the Continentals. Continentals are also the United States. Sometimes I'll call them Continentals, sometimes I'll call them the United States, sometimes I'll call them the Colonials. They're all the same. I didn't even realize I'm doing it. So the British have certain advantages. And these advantages, they all make sense. But it hides a pretty important weakness. They have more people. They have a strong government, not an ad hoc group of Philadelphia who really have no authority. They have a Bank of Britain that issues currency. They have solid debt. People trust them. Britain has a sound economy. It's not a very big army, but they are experienced. Bulldogs, they were called, how hard they fought, and the best navy in the world. Loyalists meant that it's a civil war. And loyalists, that means there's spies everywhere. Because a loyalist, this might shock you, looks exactly the same. Looks exactly the same as a patriot. And American Indians would rally to the side of the British. A little ironic here, remember they fought with the French? More of them, but now they're fighting with the British, they'll keep the colonists, the new United States out of their land. These strange bedfellows, right? And the slaves that offer freedom shows that this can undermine the southern colonies. And so the British have all the advantages. You look at pure numbers, they should win, right? But wars aren't fought with numbers. They're not fought abstractly. They're fought by how long a country can take it, how long they can fight. Wars are political. Do you have the political will to stand up for this? How long does the British want to keep spending money to keep the colonies in the fight? Continentals, they have, quit shaking. What's going on? Let's go. So Washington, he was not a great commander on the field in like a modern European style fight, but he was a great leader. Also, France is coming in. This would be key. In fact, without France, it wouldn't happen. Supply lines. Our supply, okay, we don't have many supplies, but it's shorter. There's a cause. What's the cause? Independence, liberty. Now, is liberty enough to get you to take a musket ball in your face? Probably not, but it might get you to stay and fight. It might get you to volunteer. I know I said musket ball in your face and think, boy, that's extreme. Is it?
No, they don't.
They're fighting for their homes. But here's the biggie, and this is why it's italicized. They only have to survive. Washington doesn't have to win big victories. He just can't have his army destroyed. As long as Washington's army's in the field, the war goes on. As long as Continental Congress can meet somewhere, the war goes on. Britain can go anywhere they want with their navy, but they can't hold everywhere. Someday, the British will go home. That means Washington just has to stay in the fight. No, Washington was not a great commander in the classical military sense. That doesn't matter as much as keeping the army on the field. They retreated into New Jersey after disaster, but he still had an army. That is why, for Britain, this is a really hard fight. How long is Parliament and the people of Britain going to want to make this sacrifice? Yeah, they might have all the numbers, but do we really want to keep chasing them around? Eventually, there's a very good chance they'll go home. In the American Civil War, it's going to be very close to this. The South had this advantage, and they nearly won. And that would have been the end of the United States. We're going to see it time after time. So in special topics in American history, we're doing the Vietnam War. And now the tables have turned. The US has all the advantages, but in the Civil War in South Vietnam, a group called the Viet Cong, all they have to do is survive. Eventually, the United States will lose political will. In your lifetime, this has happened twice to the United States. The United States went home, and the other side won. Happened in Iraq, and really happened in Afghanistan. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's not. Oh, yeah, I mean, Russia has all the advantages you would think of manpower, troops. It's not a guerrilla fight. That's what we have for trying to warfare right now. But yeah, Russia, and I mean, Russia is absolutely doing things of pure desperation, which is actually terrifying. Because they have, 4,000 nuclear weapons. Probably another 4,000 they can move really fast. So they
There's
don't
nothing scarier than a desperate man.
Huh?
I said there's nothing scarier than a desperate man.
Especially a desperate man who's completely delusional and isolated.
Everyone here knows better than.
But this time it's different. Everybody always say, this time it's different. So, stay in the fight. Washington stayed in the fight. So, here's Washington fleeing. See it? Across New Jersey. And there's nothing more than a dirt track. Fortunately, the British are very complacent. They're kicking back. How things, it's over. I want to stay in the remnants of New York City and relax with the homes of loyalists and just enjoy warmth. We'll let the Continental Army just fall apart in the winter. They have no food, they have no supplies. A third of the men have no shoes. It's over. And so, the Hessians. The Hessians are German. Now, you always see them called, what are soldiers who their only loyalty is money? Mercenaries. And they'll be called mercenaries all the time. They're actually not mercenaries. Hesse has a little principality in Germany. Their king sold them, and their king kept the money. They were draftees. So these poor German soldiers, the principality is called Hesse, but in America, they become known as Hessians. I know it's mispronounced, and we'll go with it. And these are some Hessians, most of them wore green uniforms. Can you imagine how low your morale would be if you're paid horribly, you're forced into the army, and then your leader, the king in this instance, sells you to another country, and you are shipped off to another place that you have no idea where it is. It seems like the wild wilderness. They speak a different language, so they hate you, and they just throw you in the middle of this. That's what happened to the Hessians. And that's what the British did. They stuck them way out on the frontier, while most of the British soldiers hung out in New York. So, I know I put this up here, but you really can't see what happened here, right? I think somebody needs to draw you a map. All right, it's map time. So I gotta leave this on. Here's New York City. Feel like you're there? Here's Philadelphia. All right, we're good? There's a road. It's nothing more than a wagon run across New Jersey. It gets to the Delaware River. There's no bridges virtually anywhere. So where's my blue pen? Blue pen. Here we go. I'll draw the river for it. This is the Delaware River. Rivers are very straight in the east. Just go with me. You're shaking your head. There's a little town here called Trenton. There's a ford here and a ferry crossing, and then a road down to Philadelphia. They are going nuts. Members of the Continental Congress are here. They're doing I got to get back to the plantation. They're a lot of the people that were all gung-ho in July are a little nervous now. There's little towns along the way, like here's a little town called Princeton, and they're garrisoned. The main British forces here are waiting for spring to end. Washington is here now, maybe 2,000. Old, miserable. Men are deserting every night. They don't really have there's no shelter. They're trying to buy food, but no one, they're using worthless paper money they called Continentals. And nobody would sell them food. It's over. Washington has maybe 1,000 men who could fight. And doesn't know what to do. But Christmas was a major celebration across Europe, Britain. Now, Christmas was not a religious holiday per se. What's the most important Christian holiday? Easter. That is Easter. Christmas, they just kind of, they piggybacked on a Roman holiday called Saturnalia, and they just kind of kept the Saturnalia, the holidays that. Yeah. Rome. Yeah. Pagan in the Christian context means not Christian.
Pagan pretty much means not whatever religion I.
Yeah, a pagan is a way to say you're not like me. So you're wrong. No. So that's exactly it. But they're taking this, and it's about a 12-day drunk. And they follow the Roman tradition of those who are on the bottom, like the lower class, the vast majority, they would like run the place for 12 days. And this whole thing just is kind of this massive drunken brawl for 12 days. Sometimes 7 in Britain. In fact, it was such a kind of disruption when cities started to become bigger. The first police force in the United States, permanent police force in the 1820s in New York City, was created for one purpose, the first purpose, to stop the Christmas celebration. I know that seems so weird. Christmas, as you might think of, has not been invented yet.
Wait, was it the Pinkertons?
No, Pinkertons were private detectives. There were coming to Pinkertons too. So the Germans are out in the middle of nowhere, miserable, cold, unhappy, just can't even describe how upset they are. And they decide we'll give them, okay, not the 12 days, but 1 day. Christmas Day, they shipped in a bunch of schnapps and they were just going to say, okay, you guys can do a drink. Patriot farmers heard about this and they crossed the river and told Washington they got a bunch of alcohol. Their plan is just to have this massive celebration on Christmas Day. Washington hears about this and decides, that's my time to attack. And get my army spirits up and show we can win a battle after defeat. And when do you attack? Not when they're drunk. When they're sleeping it off. Attack before sunup on the 26th. And that became the plan. So December 26th is going to take a shivering, cold army, most of them just have rags on, be rowed across the Delaware by the very same people. Now, before he did it, Thomas Paine, the author of Common Sense, would write another book, another pamphlet called The American Crisis. And Thomas Paine sitting in Philadelphia watching this panic, and he's like, no, times are bad, but we can still win. This might be his greatest work, and Washington read it to his men. I got out it so everybody get comfortable. We'll be to have any plans this weekend. So let me read you the very beginning. And it has one of the most stirring beginnings. I just love this beginning. A man of letters right here, Thomas Paine. These are the times that try men's souls. That's pretty cool, isn't it? That's pretty cool. The worst time. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now, deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny like hell is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. It's worth it. But I love that line. What's a summer soldier? What's a sunshine patriot? Yeah.
Someone who's like a patriot only when it looks like they.
Yeah. Back in July, things were great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good analogy. Everything's great, and then they run away. Just like what was happening in Philadelphia and turning against Washington. So Washington's telling them, those survivors, those who didn't desert, those who walked barefoot across New Jersey, where they could follow the path of the march by the bloody footprints. Those people, you're the best. You are the best. Get on these awful rickety boats and cross the river with me. And okay. And so they crossed. Royalist farmers saw them cross, and before sunup, as they crossed north of the river and turned south, they ran into Trenton to warn the Hessians, and what happened? Yeah, they couldn't wake anybody up. They're in their barns or whatever place trying to stay warm, and they're all passed out. And so it worked. Even with over half of the soldiers under Washington's command, their powder got wet. They didn't have rifles. They didn't have gunpowder for the rifles. They still attacked and they won. There'd be a couple of sharp fights, and the Hessians trying to get their clothes on. Washington's men swept through, won. The Hessians had to surrender. Some ran away. A glorious victory. It's not a massive victory, but they won a battle. And then Washington did the smart thing. He ran away and got a camp down here and sat and waited for what happened. Howe heard about it, organized his men and said, okay, you want to fight in the winter? We're going. And he marched his men down this path to Trenton. On the night of the 2nd, Howe's plan was to attack Washington's camp. Washington used a trick he had learned on the frontier. He had his men light campfires at night, like they're getting ready to cook dinner. And then they did what? Yeah, they ran away. So on the 3rd, Howe's men attacked an empty camp, while Washington took his men and attacked the rear guard at Princeton. That's why Trenton and Princeton go together on the 3rd. He took 800 British soldiers by surprise, and pretty clever, wasn't it? Attack the rear guard. Don't attack the main British force. Now, unfortunately, Washington's exhausted men, the men broke down. Some stopped and looted or ate the British soldiers' breakfast. And the British started rallying and started pushing Washington's men back. Washington, seeing this, mounted his horse, rode to the front, bullets fly, going by him. And these are black powder, so you can almost see the bullets fly by. And started waving his hat, rallying his soldiers, come on, man, let's go. Yelling every obscenity they had in the book of obscenities in 1776. And he's screaming and yelling at them. His men rallied and won the day. Washington had a bullet hole through his hat, a bullet hole through his coat. Not it. You can imagine he felt pretty special. Washington showed his leadership. Hey, he didn't attack this great, brilliant men, but they turned the tide. And here's why it's so important. Then what did he do? Run away. He ran away. There's a little place here called Morristown and spent the winter. Miserable winter. But this is why Trenton and Princeton are so important. It showed patriots. This is what you got to get down. They showed patriots they can win a battle. They could win a battle. They're in the fight. They're in the fight. We're not done. And it also showed the British, okay, we're going to have to knock them out. We can go any place we want, but we can knock them out. At least that's what it should have shown. It didn't. Big victory. These are the times that tribesmen souls. I love that beginning. He won. It's like one of those things how someone could be so clever to come up with it. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It's big. So, so these are things I talked about. So Princeton, patriots can win a battle. So this is going to be a big deal. This is going to represent, we can fight for this country based upon rights, for equality. Trenton and Princeton are going to have great symbolic value. Remember I told you how important the Declaration of Independence was all around the world? Well, this gives you an example of, this is one of the most famous paintings of Washington crossing the Delaware. It's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. I took that picture. I have no idea who those people are. I tried to wait till there wasn't people all over and quick snapped it. That's why I'm kind of like this angle here. No, Washington did not cross the Delaware standing there. He's not a lunatic. But who painted this? It's a German artist by the name of Lutzen. And he's painting this in 1848 to try to rally Germans to unify into one country, using as an example what the Americans did. So when I said this is an important, this is important all around the world, something for Americans to be proud of, this is an example of it. Yes, it's in New York City now, but it was for German nationalism or pride. Kind of weird, isn't it? But that's how this works. It shows the importance of this. It's cool painting. And there's Washington. Here's another picture of an American one of Washington with the creepy 1790s face. Yeah, so they stuck this in because this is a famous painting from the 1790s when he's president, and they just stuck that face there. You get it? But you want to see something really creepy? And so a little bit after that, the Washington cutting down the cherry tree, and he did not lie. This made up story. You want to see a painting of that? With the guy author showing it to you? Look at Washington's face. I'll make it bigger. Okay, so the British now have a fight. 1777, they came up with a pretty good strategy. And the strategy is this. I'll do it right for the bell rings. The last thing for today. Take New York. Take all the state of New York. That means go up the Hudson and conquer it. Well, they have troops in Canada too. So Howe would go up the Hudson, and gentleman Johnny Burgoyne would come south from Canada, and they would take the Hudson right here. Where are all the lunatic patriots? New England. It'll cut them off. And therefore, isolate New England. They can be defeated in kind, and the rest of the colonies will be firmly under British control. Now, it's arguable if this strategy would have worked as clean as they thought, but it's not a bad idea. Isolate New England. Isolate the patriot activity. The problem was, General Howe heard this and said, that's an interesting idea. I'm not going to do it. Howe decided, because he had his brother, they're going to attack Philadelphia. That's where the Continental Congress is, and that's where he's going. So he disobeyed orders from London and acted like he never got them. I don't know, I didn't get them. His brother's the commander of the Royal Navy fleet there, and so they went actually up to Chesapeake and attacked this way. Towards Philadelphia, which is right here. He figured that's the capital, take the capital, it's over. Washington rushed his men to meet him there. There'd be one sharp fight at Brandywine. Washington once again left his flanks hanging, and his army was nearly destroyed. They survived. And then there'd be another fight at Germantown, and Washington's army would fight better. I know the bell rings. Let me tell you one more thing. What did the Continental Congress do? Did they hang out in Philadelphia and be captured? They just ran away. So they captured Philadelphia, but now what? So, you know what I'd like all of you to do? Did I assign a reading to you? Not until Tuesday, but you have to finish chapter 5, 221 to 241. So I thought I told you. Basically the end of chapter 5. Tuesday, not until Tuesday. Have a great day, everybody. That's the plan. Everything takes longer than I think.
Have you ever considered being on history? That's a serious question. Have you ever considered being on history?
Actually, the show's been canceled.
What?
Yep, the show's canceled. They canceled it last year. So if you see it now, it's all reruns.
That's so sad. Why?
Yeah, it's all reruns.
That's
Oh yeah, nothing big.
No, I think.
Yeah, nothing. What you do is nothing big. Yeah, we're finishing. So. And keep the mic or not. Took longer, I think. I'm good. Hopefully this has good news.
Yeah.
First, you probably won't find out for a week. The best part, you go, oh no, and nothing moved.
Yeah.
Arms didn't move, you just,
Well, my left,
huh?
my left arm,
A little bit.
yeah.
I can switch it. I know you want to hang out here. Leave. No, I'm doing this party. Boy, everyone came at once. The flood.
Oh.
Oh. Get the broken hand. Wreaking havoc. Play. Yes.
How about we go to get rid
Half sheet of paper. Really what? Half sheet of paper. Show. Oh,
I counted it.
yeah, that didn't hit the ground. Half sheet of paper, number 1 to 1,000.
Yes, oh my goodness. It's like,
Line 13.
oh wait, that's. So how I see. Yeah.
Half sheet of paper, 1 to 1,000. Or 6. Freehand.
Yeah.
Wow.
My other one's really bad. Absolutely.
Doesn't hang your hat on. What's that?
No, mine wasn't.
Now the folding seems like it's cheating. Count it. All right. They shall not pass. I'm gonna show you a creepy picture today too. It's gonna be really cool. Any questions? Did the bell ring? Let's do it. The test is here. I didn't make it on sheet paper. It's only 6 questions. So it will be on this. Half sheet of paper, 1 to 6. Can you read it? One of those things might not have been on the list. I don't know. I just.